Hello, and welcome to Real Person Reviews. I'm Sam, and I'm a real person, and today I want to talk to you about Castlevania, Portrait of Ruin. So this is a game for the Nintendo DS, and it's basically, if you've heard me talk about the other Castlevania games, which if you haven't, go back and look at those other Castlevania reviews I did. I did all the 3 Game Boy Advance ones. There's those, so check those out. This is on the DS, which came later, and of course it's a similar thing of, Metroidvania stuff. You go around and you kill monsters and level up, and you get different equipment in this game. There's a shop to buy equipment. You can find equipment laying around, and some enemies will drop equipment, so you can get different stuff to change up your stats and, build your character kind of the way you want to for certain situations. You also find these different items that give you abilities to, help progress through the game. There are some also, like, just general power-ups for, like, your health and your magic. But, it's fairly standard stuff for the genre, and I guess in that regard, it's not very impressive, unless you like that stuff, which is good, then, because I do, so I liked it. The story is a little weird, and I would tell you about it, but there's some kind of, like, twists and surprise things, I guess, that sort of happen, and I don't want to really spoil it, but basically, it's one of those where you're going into Dracula's castle, trying to stop people who are trying to resurrect Dracula, and you're part of a family that is somehow able to use the vampire killer. Not the Belmont family; it's a different family, but they can use it with the help of a different family. So it's kind of weird side thing, I guess. And the only thing is that you're the main character, and you don't know how to unlock the full potential of the vampire killer. So that's a thing. That's there you go. That's mostly the story that starts out. It's not a lot. I don't want to spoil stuff, so that's the story. Which, going off of this stuff alone, you probably think, okay, like, I've played this kind of thing before. But there are a couple things that help. Like, this is a DS game, so that's cool. There's 2 screens, so basically when you're playing, you can either have a screen up telling you all of your stats, and some of the stats on the enemies that you're fighting, or you can switch toggle the top screen to be the map. So you don't have to keep pausing and going into, like, a maps menu to check out, the maps. It's a thing where, like, it's called Portrait of Ruin, so there are different, like, portraits you find, and you can go into the portraits, and then you're transported to, like, those other worlds, or, like, those other maps. So there's multiple different maps in this, instead of just being one huge singular map. So there's more possibilities than that you can travel around and go to these different places. It's pretty cool. There's this mechanic they like to use with, you basically are controlling 2 characters. You can hit a button to switch between the 2 characters. The one character is more about, has stats that are better for, like, physical damage, brawling, combat, close quarters stuff. And the other character is is weaker, but more of a spellcaster and good for, like, hitting elemental stuff, hitting enemies from a distance. And it's cool that you can get different types of weapons, mostly for the main guy, I guess, because you get some different stuff, like there like some stuff with different arcs or, like, stabbing weapons. There's a few whips. There's some cool stuff for you to get. And some interesting stuff going on there with the stats, and you get these cool spells, and some spells one character can use, some the other can use. Some of them are joint spells that they both use at the same time. Some equipment can be worn by one or the other, or both. And so you can kind of customize how you want to use those characters, but they already are clearly geared towards, these 2 different sets of things. So that's interesting to keep in mind, that while you do that, though, you both run on the same health bar and magic bar. So that's a thing to keep track of, where, like, if you have one character that's, weaker, they're probably going to take more damage if you have them out. But it depends on what they can do and what you want to do. It depends on how you want to play. There's also a few parts where you can do this thing where you can send out your character, so that you're basically, it's basically like an NPC, and they'll kind of, like, fight alongside you and try to throw in some attacks while you're there. They can sometimes distract. You can kind of direct them where to go with, like, the touchscreen if you decide to touch over on the spot when they're out. and they'll try to go over there, or you can tell them to hold their position. You can kind of like jump off of their head and do some like little like things here and there, little parts that you have to solve, little puzzles with the other characters there as well. So that's interesting stuff to toss in. And so it's cool to have like this different kind of like a little more dynamic combat and switching things out without it being too, you know, complicated. There's not a whole lot. There's not a whole lot to consider. It's just like you have to get used to using the controls for that, I suppose. And it's also cool that there's a lot of stuff to do in this game. Like I know, like you know, there's a thing that like sometimes these games like this can get a little grindy when you're like, okay, this boss is too hard for me to beat. Instead of trying to get through them with a better, you know, skill and get in there, if you just, you know, you can't seem to do any better on them, you can go and off and like grind, like, okay, I'm gonna go get stronger because this enemy or this area is just way too hard for me. I'm taking too much damage. I'm not doing enough damage. I want to get stronger, and you go off and you grind. And there's stuff in here where like you still kind of grind to do this, but it's interesting and it gives you kind of like a sense of progression and a little bit of reward. And a reason, you know, to go grinding. So, like, if you do that, like, okay, well, I'm not just, you know, grinding for the sake of trying to put my level up a bunch, to get my stats up. There's stuff like you can try to go and uncover all the areas of the map, you know, because it shows you the percentage of how much, you know, the percent of map you've uncovered for each of the areas. So you can try to find the other parts of those maps and looking for hidden, you know, like, breakable walls or hidden passages or just places you couldn't go to before, but now you have the abilities to get there. And there's like a... For a lot of your sub-weapons you can get, which are just kind of under spells, sort of. They're like weapon things you unlock, I guess. You can master those, and basically they get stronger the more you use them. So you can try to, you know, master some of those you haven't, you know, mastered yet. And basically you just kill enemies with them. You do damage to the enemies and then kill them. So once you do the damage to them with that item and then kill them, you get, based on what enemy it is and everything, you get so many, like... spell points or some shit. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but you get like points towards getting that thing stronger. And once you get the max level, then it does the most damage, and usually it'll give it some kind of buff, like it'll make your projectile like bigger, or you have multiple of them or something. So it's really cool to do that. You can try to just master all these, you know, because each monster has either is 0 to 2 different item drops. So you can try to keep killing the same, you know, monsters over and over, and try to unlock all the monsters, find all of them, and unlock all of their stuff to get the completion rate on all of the monsters. Try to get all the items and try to complete. There's these cool side quests, which are, I think are really fun too. Is like you can just do these side things and like, you get like rewards for doing each of these side quests. It's like, oh, go do this like objective, and you go and do the thing. You're like, oh, I remember like where they're talking about that was back at this place, and you go do it, and it's like that's fun to do. So there's a bunch of stuff that you can do like in between here to like, okay, I'm gonna get all this stuff, and I'm gonna try to, you know, beef with these percentages and all this, and it's just something to do, and like you get reward for it too because you get stuff for a lot of that. So it's like I'm gonna do this while I'm getting stronger, so it's not just a tedious grind of like I'm gonna kill enemies over and over just to get stronger, so I can beat this part. It's not like boring and pointless. And I think I really, really appreciated that. They made it like extra fun that there was a bunch of this other stuff to do, and I actually felt really compelled to keep doing it, and I had a lot of fun doing all of that grinding and stuff. And there are multiple endings to the game. And it's really cool is that once you beat the game, depending on certain like things you've accomplished, you can get bonuses for your next playthroughs. You can either do a New Game Plus, or you can try to get the stuff over again. Basically, you'll keep all of your equipment, and like most of your equipment and items, aside from like quest sensitive, you know, like story sensitive stuff that you'll have to get again anyway to keep progressing. Anything besides that you have with you, you will pretty much carries over. And then just because you know, like then you can go back and do some stuff. Maybe you missed something, or you know, you want to go back through and you don't, you know. You research areas, you can tell which areas you've been to and which ones you haven't. It's just New Game Plus. It just gives you a little bit of a boost. It's interesting. Or you can start up and you'll unlock these modes for like playing as different characters. And it's cool because there's a few different modes, and it's neat that playing as different characters allows you to play, like, they're like different play styles too. It's like the same place, but the way the characters play is a lot different. And I almost started to play through it again. I almost did for one of the characters because I just like kind of started up a bit. I was like, oh, this is cool. This this is pretty fun, and I almost kept playing. I was like, no, I should play some other stuff first and come back to this later, so that when I come back to it later, I'll have something new to like check out when I come back to it. So it's cool. I thought it was cool, and it's neat because it's overall design too. It's like the mixture of like the story stuff going on is kind of interesting. I think the graphics, graphically it looks cool, and a lot of stuff can be pretty colorful and interesting to look at. I think they did some cool enemy combinations and stuff that you're fighting, and there was a lot of just really interesting things they kind of tossed into this, and it's a really great mix. I do have to bring up some bad things because I've been praising the shit out of this. I think it's great, but there are some issues with this game. I know that's supposed to. For one thing, when we start, I'm going to say that it's nice that I don't. It's one of those games where it's like I don't really like the touchscreen crap for the DS stuff. I don't really care for touchscreens in general. And while I will say that I liked that this game didn't really have much of that, there was like very minimal things you could do with the touchscreen. I will admit that people who are looking, for a game that needed to be on the DS, this wasn't really one of them. You could have had this game. Almost could have had this game on the Game Boy Advance. I mean, there'd be some tweaking involved, but, you don't use a touchscreen that much, and people who were looking for that, for something that was, like, one of the main features of the system they were trying to push, aside from having two screens, But, I guess, that's the thing. It's like, I'm glad they didn't do much of it, but if you were looking for that, then you might not be too terribly impressed with this game. Another thing I found, is a thing I found incredibly annoying, is how, basically, there's a point about halfway through the game where, and this is kind of spoiler territories here, so if you don't want to hear this, you can just kind of skip ahead a couple minutes. I'm sure I'll still be rambling about bad stuff. So yeah, skip ahead like 2-3 minutes, something like that. There's a point like halfway through the game where you come in contact with these two sisters. They're actually the daughters of like this other character that is dead, and you're like talking to that character's like ghost. They're the daughters of that character, but they've been turned into vampires by this vampire character, and you fight those two. You're supposed to fight them. There's a part where you can have a battle with them, and your instinct when fighting them is to kill them. That's your instinct, because of course you're fighting enemies. What have you done with enemies the entire game? You've killed them. So you try and kill them, and you can. They're tough. They're pretty tough for like so they seem like final boss type characters, and you fight them, and then you like almost kill them, and then the vampire comes in and is like, why are you trying to kill them? It's like, fine. It's like, don't kill them, I'm leaving, and he like leaves, and the place like crumbles, and it's like, oh geez, like it got away, and that's the end, and it says game over, and you're like, okay, so is that it, I guess? And because that was like the last thing you do, you beat the boss and it ends, some people might even like be like, okay, that's the end of it, that was the whole game, that was kind of short, and I don't know, and it's a thing where like that's not the end of the game, and they tell you, I don't think they did a great job telling you what to do, and I think it's a little complicated to get past this hump, because this is really just a halfway point. Basically, you're supposed to save them. You get this sanctuary spell after doing a certain quest, I believe, or maybe you find it, I don't remember. I think you have to find it. But you get this spell, and you can use this spell to turn people back from vampires, back into, humans. And, there's only really one, they mention that you should be able to turn them back, or you should try to save them. They don't mention anything of, like, how you'd be able to do that, so you don't really know if that's something, like, the character just says, I'll try to save them, but there's no way for them to do it. Or if they're actually saying, like, okay, like, that's for you, player, you should try to figure out how you're supposed to save them. It's not very clear. And the only real indication is, like, that line. Plus, there's a part where the shopkeeper turns into a vampire. He's starting to turn into a vampire. And you can do the spell on him and change him back. And if you because they mentioned, like, I'll have to try to use one of the spells that I have to change him back. And if you do that, and that's really your indication. So they do give you some hints and some leads towards it, but it doesn't necessarily, like, maybe you don't go back to the shopkeeper, or maybe, you know, you don't bother trying to save him, or don't know what spell would have done it, and say, whatever, maybe I don't have it yet. And, like, or something, and then you keep going, and then the game ends, and I don't know, I feel like it could have been a little more clear. But the thing that's really annoying about this is that in order to save them, you have to cast that spell and charge it all the way up to save them. Charging it all the way up is not easy. It takes, like, I think somewhere between, like, 15 and, maybe not even 15, somewhere between, like, 10 and 20 seconds, somewhere in that window of just standing there and trying to charge it up. And it doesn't sound necessarily like a lot, but when there are enemies trying to attack you, and anytime they hit you, it interrupts you, and you have to start doing it again, plus the fact that you could die while you're trying to do it, it's really annoying. There are some strategies around it, but it's still, like, very annoying and weirdly difficult for you to be able to just do this part of the game to unlock the whole second half of the game. Because if you miss out on that, like, and you just think that's the end for beating them, then you miss out on literally half of the game. So that, I found that to be really annoying. There's also a thing with the side quests where you're able to fuck up the side quests. There are some side quests that you can, it gets to the point where you can't actually complete them. Because some of them require you to have certain items on your person. So if you've sold those items during gameplay, you know, like I did, because, like, I don't need this item, I'm just going to get extra money for it to buy other stuff, and I would sell it off. And later on in the quest, it says you need to have such and such items, and I was like, maybe somebody else drops it or something, so I looked it up, and I was like, nope, nobody drops that. If you, and they're like, you know, they say, like, do not sell this stuff. It's like, I guess I have to wait until New Game Plus or start a new game over at this point to even do that. So that was really frustrating to me. That there was, they designed it so that you could fuck up your side quests, and there was no, like, enemy to drop it or anything, any way for you to, you know, get that stuff back. That really pissed me off, because it's poor design, and I wanted to finish all those side quests. And the one thing that they I guess is supposed to remedy that is that there's this shopping thing where I guess you can, like, buy and sell items online, which of course you can't do now because, you know, the DS servers aren't up anymore. But apparently there was a way you could buy and sell items online, I guess. And, like, if you know, needed a quest item, you didn't want to start a new game just to get a quest sensitive item for, like, the side quest things, yeah, you would just get it with I believe in-game currency. I would hope you just get it off from somebody else who's putting it up for sale or something, you know. And it's a neat idea, I guess, but maybe they could have just designed the game a little better and made it so you didn't need to do that. And that shop thing sounds weird, and at this point it's useless. It's already useless because they shut down those servers. So that's not great. Oh, there's also some other modes I should mention, though, you know, because, like, I'll just say this quick. As far as bad things, that's, like, the worst. Those are the things that bothered me. The rest of the stuff, pretty good. I didn't really have much problem with the rest of it, aside from getting annoyed about sucking at the game at times. Those are the major complaints I had with the game. There's just a couple things I want to say really quick, though, is that with the extra modes, you know, I said all that stuff, there's also hard mode. There's a level cap on it. So if you play hard mode, there's a level cap of 50, level cap of 25, and a level cap of 1. And you get some cool unlockables for doing those, but those sound really, really fucking hard. And I guess that could be seen as a complaint if you didn't want it to be that fucking hard, but maybe you want that challenge, so I can't really say that's necessarily a bad thing. And there's also a boss rush mode, which is interesting that they have that. I don't think I want to bother just trying to go through bosses. That wasn't really the draw for this kind of thing for me. I like the leveling up and the exploring and getting stronger and all that. I didn't necessarily want to have a straight up... If I want to have more of a straight up challenge like that, about my skills and having a game built around that, I would probably just play a game that was straight up built around that. Like, you know, Castlevania, or Castlevania 3, or Castlevania 4. And even Castlevania 2, sort of. So, I don't know. There were other Castlevania ones that did that, so... I guess that's the thing I would mention. Castlevania, Portrait of Ruin. It's really good. I have to say that honestly, of all the Castlevania games I've played, which are basically the first one I played, like Castlevania Legends on Game Boy. I played Castlevania 4. I played a little bit, and the 3 Game Boy Advance ones. I played some Castlevania games. You guys get it. Of all the Castlevania games I played, this one is right now is my favorite. And I don't know if they're going to be able to top this because, I really like the 2D Metroidvania kind of style and stuff. I thought it was like colorful. I thought it played well. I like that it wasn't really gimmicky, and it was just a lot of fun. Lots of cool stuff to do. I just had a great time. Honestly just had a great time with this game, and even the bonus modes. Like I was grinding, and that was fun. And there's bonus modes to do, and I'm like, I want to play as all these different characters too because they're going to be different. It's gonna be great. There's just so much stuff in here. It's like jam packed, and it's just convenient, and it's awesome, and I highly recommend it. I'm surprised I got it for it's like $15 for this thing. That's it. It's cheap as balls for how awesome this is. So definitely check the game out if you're a fan of the Metroidvania, Castlevania stuff, or a fan of Castlevania games like in general. You're gonna love the shit out of this because it's great. So that's my review. And you guys can look forward to future reviews of Castlevania stuff. I still have to try and actually beat the first Castlevania because that's fucking hard. And I got another one on the DS I should probably finish as well because that'll be fun. So, look forward to those. And if you want to see a written review for this, you can always go over to www.thegravelpit.net and check out my written review. Or, if it's easier for you to navigate, just go in the description and click the link to that, because that's just faster to click things, I guess. And, yeah. It didn't come in the real box, though, so, yeah. A great box I can display.